Today's civil discourse surrounding politics, entertainment, just about anything is probably not at the highest level, so to speak, as it's been in our country's history. And that's probably the biggest understatement of them all. Well, a new initiative is entering this arena at Cleveland State University, the Center for Civics, Culture, and Society. These types of centers are not unique or new. They exist at Ohio State, they exist at the University of Cincinnati, they exist in different places across the country. So to help us understand what this center is and what role it may play, it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Peter Koritansky, who is the director of this center. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much, Rob.
So let's start in the basic place. You're you are the director of the Center for Civics, Culture, and Society. Yeah. What is civics? What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing we should always do when we enter a new initiative is define our terms. And so that's a great question. I think when most people think of the word civics, they think of very basic things like understanding how a bill becomes a law, or understanding what the three branches of government are, or the basic process of the amendment process outlined in the Constitution. And those are all very, very important things. But as we look at the term and the concept of civics here at the center, this new Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, we mean something a little bit deeper than that. And it's not just understanding how these institutional things work, but understanding, and this is in a way a direct quotation from the law that brought us into existence, understanding the core traditions and ideas and texts that lie at the heart or at the foundation of our American constitutional republic. And so that really is what we're all about at the center, is engaging with these texts and ideas, bringing students into a conversation with these core texts and ideas, and that everything else that we do at the center will be somewhat orbiting around that core idea. And so the texts that I have in mind are things like the Constitution itself, the Federalist Papers, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, but of course it goes well beyond that as well. Also things like John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, and the whole historical setting of how our nation came into existence and what it really exists for. So that's the short answer to your question, I suppose.
And talk a little bit more about why bring culture, society, civics together under one umbrella.
Yeah, great question. When I think of culture and society and the role that culture and society play and what they add to civics, I really come back to the idea that our American constitutional republic doesn't come into existence in a vacuum. The civilization that the framers of the Constitution were trying to establish is within the context of a broader Western civilization that they understood themselves already as a part of. And so we at the Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, we really believe that you can't really understand what the American experiment is if you don't understand the philosophical, the political, the literary, the artistic, the architectural culture that was the context of the American experiment. And so, when we think of civics, we really automatically think of these other broader cultural and philosophical points that come into play. Let me just give you one example, if I may. One of the core texts that we're really required to look at is Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. In that letter, he's responding to his fellow pastors, and he's answering the question, how can you possibly, as a Christian, justify disobeying the law and engaging in civil disobedience? And in that letter, he says, well, you can only do that. That action only makes sense if you make a distinction between just laws and unjust laws. And he invokes the name of St. Thomas Aquinas, of all people, and St. Augustine in order to provide the basis for that act of civil disobedience. And so if you want to really understand what was motivating Martin Luther King Jr., if you want to go deeper, you have to then crack open the books of St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine and say, well, what is this idea of natural law? What do they mean by these terms, natural law and eternal law? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to push deeper when it comes to the whole concept of civics.
Mm-hmm. And let me just, what is your center doing right now? In that you, and why were you interested in taking on the challenge of creating such a thing from basically the ground up?
Yeah, well, the first part of your question, what are we doing? Three things basically. Teaching, and I think that really is the core of what we're doing. What we're going to be doing in the classroom is what's really important. Teaching, but also research and community outreach. So we want this whole concept of civics to really be something that spills over into the greater Cleveland area and which we invite people into. So we've already been having, we already had 2 major events this semester. And these are open events, open to the public, and we've been very edified by the fact that many people from the community have come and participated in that with us. What got me involved in this, or what inspired me to take on this responsibility? Really, Rob, it is a kind of a deep conviction that these centers, all of the centers, pardon me, are just so badly needed. Civic education, especially with the kind of depth that I was trying to describe a minute ago, is so profoundly needed. One good example of that, I don't know how many people have seen the recent clip of Senator Tim Kaine discussing, I think it was in a Foreign Relations Committee hearing, talking about the idea that our rights come from the Creator rather than from government or the law. And he characterized this right there in the committee meeting as a very dangerous idea, an idea that is very characteristic of theocracy. And he says, this is what the Iranians believe. This isn't what we Americans believe. We believe that our rights come from the law. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. A basic familiarity with the principles of the Declaration of Independence reveal just how wrong he was. So obviously, Tim Kaine is a senator. He understands very well the machinations of the federal government. But that basic, what that revealed to me anyway, is that basic lack of understanding of the principles that lie underneath our democratic republic are badly lacking, even at the very highest level. And I think I'll mention one other thing, and it's just this, that in this country, and especially among university-age people, we've just kind of forgotten how to talk to each other. And this is a very deep and profound problem that we have in this country. Social media is obviously behind it to some degree. But I think what we're trying to do is to chip away at that problem, is to help model these virtues of civil discourse and reasoned discourse, and to reintroduce that to students and say, no, this constitutional republic that we're in presupposes certain habits of character. And we want to model those habits of character with you. We want to help you navigate and acquire those habits of character so you can be good citizens. That's a noble undertaking.
Mm-hmm. And you've alluded to this already, but talk a little bit more about what your vision goals are for community impact in the greater Cleveland area.
Yeah, well, I think probably the first thing that I would mention, sort of the most important thing that we're going to be doing right away, is we just received news of a federal grant that we got to launch our K through 12 initiative. And that is really something we're very excited about. This is a program that is going to service about 90 teachers in the greater Cleveland area, all the way from the west side of Cleveland and even a little further west, all the way to Youngstown and then down even into Stark County. About 90 teachers, 3 cohorts of 30 teachers who will come to CSU and will really engage in very much of the same kind of thing that our students are engaged in, namely a kind of a grappling with the core texts and ideas of our constitutional republic. But there'll also be other people involved in these seminars, and that's what they'll be, is seminars, who will help them brainstorm about ways to apply this in an age-appropriate way to the classrooms that they're coming from. So this will be everywhere from grade school teachers, primary school teachers, junior high, high school teachers, who will come to Cleveland State for a week in the summer. They'll meet 6 times throughout the academic year, and then they'll meet again the following summer, and that will be the end of their experience. And then the next cohort will come in and do the same thing. We're going to make it very attractive for them. We're going to pay them to come. We know their time is precious and valuable, and I think it'll be a great experience for them, and really the beginning of our outreach and building those strong ties into the community that we're so blessed to be a part of.
And is part of that going to be this whole issue of social media? I mean, let's face it, there's a reality that there's a lot of disinformation and a lot of people perhaps profiting from dissemination of disinformation. I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb in saying that. How do you perceive a center such as yours to try to counter that, if you will, or to try to provide an alternative way of doing things?
No, I think that's a great question. It's a huge challenge. I think the problem of social media actually is not so much the problem of disinformation or misinformation, but it's rather the fact that, and this may be related to that, but it's the fact that our bubbles are much more insulated the more we get our news from social media. So just as an example, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, I met a lot of people whose impression of Charlie Kirk was completely dominated by the algorithm that their social media feed would give them. So if they were already left-leaning, their algorithm would only show them pictures or clips of Charlie Kirk saying very, disturbing, troubling things. And if they leaned conservative, their algorithm would only show them clips of Charlie Kirk saying very inspiring and very noble things. And so I think what people need to understand is that this is not a reliable way of learning what's going on in the world and what issues are important to our democracy. And so really the only antidote to that, Rob, I think, is leading or leading by example and showing people that we have to talk to each other directly, and we have to do so in person. There's something about sitting across the table from someone, even someone with whom you disagree vehemently, but sitting across the table from someone like we're doing now in person is a way that humanizes the person on the other end and just requires you without, in order to look like a decent person, to treat them humanely. And so that's what we want to model. And that's what we're going to try to counteract. Yes, we have a behemoth against us in social media, and of course we can't dismantle that, and nor would we want to. But we have to present an alternative way of doing things, and that's what we're going to try to do.
Yeah, and another issue is some people just feel a real sense of disconnect or disengagement from politics, from anything to do with public life.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how you can possibly positively respond to that.
Well, I'm of two minds. On one hand, I'm very sympathetic to those people because the rancor of our public discourse has reached such a fever pitch that it is very tempting just to check out entirely from public life. But I would say this, for those who are tempted to do that, and this is what we're going to try to be teaching our students right from the beginning, he who claims to have no need of politics and political figures is the one most likely to be deceived by politics and political figures. So there really is no way out of it. As a citizen, you have to engage. The question is, how do you do that in the right way? And I think that we can create a program at CSU that makes engagement with public life something that is not just an obligation, but something that there is a deep fulfillment behind it. And that's what we want to portray for students and really teach them to value that engagement with public life.
Yeah, expand on that a little bit. An important role that the center is going to play on a campus is classroom instruction, teaching itself. Talk a little bit more about the goals for us for that classroom experience for students.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things that we're really going to be working very hard towards doing is making as many of our classes as possible small seminar-style classes. I mentioned before the engagement with primary texts. At the center, we believe that the best education is not sitting in a big lecture hall listening to a professor lecture about something that he or she has an expertise in, and that there is a value in that. There is a value in that, to be sure. But the big strides in education take place in our seminar style, sitting across the table from someone, looking at a common text, and grappling with the profound principles that text is trying to communicate, whether we agree or disagree with it. And again, that kind of process really does underscore the emphasis of those habits of character that I talked about before, those virtues that are so central to a democracy, of being able to sit across the table from someone with whom you vehemently disagree, of learning to be reasonable in that context, of disagreeing with someone without becoming disagreeable, of having a reasoned conversation where the only authority recognized is reason itself, and not some religious figure or some philosopher who are just going to take at face value. Those sorts of things are going to be what characterize our classes, and the students who are truly thirsting after that kind of education will find a home in the center for sure.
And how are you going to think about directly involving students? Internships, co-op opportunities, external partnerships?
Absolutely. I think that at CSU, one of the things that CSU does really well, and particularly I've learned this just being physically housed at the Levin School, CSU does a very good job at giving students opportunities to engage in their local community, in their local governments and especially in urban affairs in the greater Cleveland area. What I would like for the center to offer eventually is internships that goes beyond the local level. Students will eventually be able to have an opportunity to spend a semester perhaps in Columbus, maybe spending some time with one of our sister school down there, the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, and then ultimately perhaps a semester in Washington, D.C., and maybe even a semester in Europe as well. We're still trying to nail down what the best location for that would be. We're still very much at the early stages of that. I don't want to say too much about it one way or the other, because I don't want to lock us into whether we're going to be in Rome or London or who knows, but we're going to be somewhere for sure within the next few years.
Excellent. And what a center such as this, not necessarily your center alone, but any center of this nature, what impact can this possibly have in the government of Greater Cleveland, council persons, local government, things along those lines? How can it help improve things?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When I was an undergraduate, I did an internship. Of course, this was not it was on Capitol Hill in Washington. But I do think that it is important that let me preface this by saying the Center for Civics, Culture, and Society is not the same thing as what you might think of as a Center for Civic Engagement. So we're not overtly preparing students for work in a nonprofit or in an NGO, or even necessarily in local government. That being said, we certainly will be able to open doors for students who want to get involved in local politics, to roll up their sleeves and get right in the middle of the debates that are going on in our local communities, because that kind of public service truly is at the heart of this sort of understanding of the common good that is the penultimate idea in all of these debates that we're having throughout that go on throughout history and lie at the core of the American founding. So that will be part of it for sure, and I think we'll probably be able to partner with a lot of the really good stuff that's going on already at the at CSU, particularly with Live in School, but also beyond that.
And where would you like the center to be 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, broadly speaking, I would love for the center to be a kind of a shining jewel in the greater Cleveland area. I would really like people to be interested in CSU because of the center and because of the kind of unique seminar style, great books, great text education that we're providing. I would like there to be a large number of people, particularly in Ohio and even in Northeastern Ohio especially, who want to come to Cleveland State University because of the center, who would not otherwise have even thought of applying to Cleveland State University. If we can achieve that, then we will have been successful.
Mm-hmm. And have you identified local community partners that you're going to seek collaborations with?
Right now, again, we're at the very early stages of the center. Right now, our partners are immediately the other four centers across the state of Ohio. And we're also going to be hopefully partnering with some institutes that will provide summer opportunities for our students when they're not sitting in classes, in seminar classes with us. We're still very much looking for and open to relationships across the state of Ohio and particularly in Northeastern Ohio. But yeah, we're very much at the early stages of making those connections for sure.
And can people reach out to you if they have an interest? Or?
Absolutely. We have
Excellent.
Our website is up and running. We're on social media officially. Just got done talking about the evils of social media, but it's the world we live in. So we're on all of the major social media outlets, and of course they can contact me directly. My number is public. So.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks to our guest, Professor Peter Koritansky, who is the director of the Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, helping us understand what these centers do, the importance of these centers, the complementary, and in some cases, unique approach to education that they are offering people who may be interested. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Cleveland Conversations.